Welcome to the Americana Bistro Girl. I'm your host, Roberto Alvarez-Galloso. I am here serving you the best in Americana music, especially in these trying times. I have the pleasure of interviewing Claudia Gibson, who I managed to meet during a quarantine lockdown concert with Laura Marie. And who was the other singer that was with you?
Let's see. That would have been probably Anna Larson.
Anna Larson.
Anna Larson from Austin. That's right.
Yeah, I have to interview her too, because Laura Marie I already knew a long time ago, but your music I got exposed to it. I loved it, and I also loved Anna Larson.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
I reviewed your webpage, and I saw all of your videos on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Some are a little bit older, but yeah, there's
regardless, that's how we get started.
Okay, cool.
In addition to being a singer, you're a journalist. How did you get started as a journalist?
Journalist, yeah.
How did you get started, and what stations did you work with?
Oh, well, I was a print journalist, mostly freelance, kind of backed into it. I've always written. I used to write really boring stuff years ago when I worked in an investment bank. And then I was living in a little Hudson Valley town called Cold Spring, New York. And a friend of mine had a newspaper, and he said, hey, one of my writers just quit. He actually had to fire them, and because they'd written something really poor. And so he said, would you like to write and cover the local government? And I was like, well, I'm not sure. So he kind of showed me the ropes, and then I spent a few years just covering pretty boring government meetings. And then through some connections, they needed some freelance writers at a newspaper in New York City, the New York Post. So I started doing features for them on people with interesting jobs, on healthcare stuff, and so it was always interesting stuff to me. Features about people and then careers and education. And after a while, I got a regular kind of feature column out of that. And then I was copy and editing for the local paper and still reporting on local things, and so that was kind of fun. But that all kind of came to a halt. I moved to Texas, and I kept freelance writing, but then after the recession, 2008, things kind of dried up, and it kind of coincided with print, changing to digital, and a lot of papers were changing, and we're downsizing, and so I found it hard to get work out here, so I stopped doing that, but I still like it,
Yeah.
every once in a while.
I like writing too, so I did, before I ask about your CDs, how did you get started as a singer-songwriter?
Oh, I think I just was always really drawn to music from a young age. I grew up in the age of top 40 radio, so I was sitting in the back seat of the car, listening to a lot of great music of all different kinds. When I was a kid, it was just, you'd hear everything on top 40 radio, from country to R&B to rock to pop, and then things like Frank Sinatra. So I loved music, and when I was about 12, I started playing guitar, and I started writing when I was a teenager. It was pretty terrible, but yeah. And then I went on to after I started playing out in clubs, I went on to study music composition in college. When I was about 20, I went off to school and I studied classical music. But then I just, I kept writing. I was in bands too at the same time. I was in rock bands, so I kept writing.
Yeah, that's great. I also saw your webpage. I was very impressed. Especially, I was impressed with one of your compositions. I heard one of your compositions and the history behind this composition, Louisiana Sky.
Oh, yeah. That was an interesting story. That started out as a combination of two things, which was I was in a songwriting group, and we had a weekly assignment to do. And it was just a phrase. It was evil eye, and I had no idea what I was going to write. And I was coming back from Florida, and I'd stopped in, my son was living in New Orleans at the time, and I was driving back to Texas, and I'd done that ride a lot of times. And I started seeing these signs for historic plantations, and I'd never really had any desire to stop at one before. I just thought it was a little bit kind of creepy, and I did, I kind of pulled over and called my husband and said, I'd really be interested in stopping and looking at a plantation that also tells a story of what it was like for the slaves who lived there, that had historic buildings and told that story a little bit. And I was right near one that he said, well, it's like this exit, just go and see. So I went to this place, Evergreen Plantation, and they have these, they're probably about 300-year-old structures that are pretty much the same. They're just sort of abandoned with these giant oaks. I mean, it's all, very manicured, but there's no people there. There's no anything. But as I got there and was we started taking the tour, this giant storm came in, and it just seemed very dramatic. I had also, my husband's family, even though he was born in the Northeast, had originally been from Louisiana. And way back in his family, there had been slave owners, and which was kind of ironic because his dad ended up being sort of a radical Northeastern minister. So, but I was at Tulane University a few years earlier than that, and had actually handled some of these papers. So, wanting to know this history, being there, and then being on this plantation, walking through these sort of deserted slave cabins while this storm was coming, it was very dramatic. And I got back home, and I knew I had to write this song, and I looked up Evil Eye, and I saw that slaves had carried around little beads as a holdover from African religions of colors, and blue ones were supposed to keep off the evil eye. So it was interesting. It was kind of a confluence, and it just sort of came together to write that song. It was more like I guess like an impressionistic painting. It wasn't telling a specific story. It was just, I found myself at this place where there was so much past history that you could almost feel it and touch it, but yet all the voices were silent. So
yeah, according to the webpage, you talked about an existentialist painting, right? Or
no, expressionist.
Right, expressionist. Sorry, expressionist. Sorry. Impressionist.
Yeah. Like an impressionist painting, like a Renoir, Monet. They're sort of out of focus in a way, and it gives you a feeling of a kind of a general impression of what it's like. That's why it was called Impressionism, and that's what it was. I felt the song was. It was just sort of an introduction. I've heard a lot of different feedback on that song from a lot of different people. One person said to me, well, you really didn't go into enough detail or enough story, and I'm like, well, that's going to be the next song. But that song wasn't designed to it was more just like, here I am in this place, and this is sort of the feeling I'm getting from this. So.
Yeah. The way I heard the song, my understanding, maybe I might be wrong or I might be right, but this is the story of like you had like in the South, like in many societies, you had an upper class enjoying the beauties of life, the privileges, while at the expense of those who were oppressed.
Very much. I mean, that's kind of what the whole, society was built on, because the sugar plantations really couldn't happen without, cheap labor, and slavery is about the cheapest labor you can get. So that's why nowadays there aren't too many sugar plantations left down there, because they were so costly to run. I mean, there are some now, but it's all by machine now. But back then, they really couldn't afford to pay people and have these plantations, and so a lot of them kind of went to rack and ruin after the Civil War, because it was just impossible. But yeah, it's kind of, there's so much holdover from that period. I live here now. I live in Texas. I lived here for a number of years, but I was born and raised in New York State, and my father's family, they were all original, from the 1600s, French Canadians, explorers and farmers and fishermen. And my mom's family, they were immigrants from Russia. They were Russian Jews, and so I came from this sort of background that was very different down here. And, there's people who have lived here for a long time, and they have a different take on things. But But economically, when you look at it, yeah, it was sort of, when you tour these plantations and you look at them, there's the great house, and it's, all the finery and all the landscape gardens, and then you have all the rest of that. And I remember as a very young kid, we went to Thomas Jefferson's home in Monticello in Virginia. And I remember being really fascinated, like, well, where do the slaves live and what do they do and why are they there and why can't they run away? And, and I remember asking all these questions of my parents, and they were getting a little bit annoyed because I'm asking these questions on the tour, which you weren't supposed to be. But I think even back then it was just kind of like, what's really going on here? It's like when you're a kid and you go to the circus and, and you see the elephants and the spangles, and then there's, someone running behind with a broom and a dustpan. And, it was, I don't think you're wrong at all. I mean, I think that's pretty much how it was. So it couldn't sustain.
Yeah. In addition to Louisiana Sky, you also wrote and recorded another song, Step by Step, which I also saw on. I saw Louisiana Sky on the YouTube plus Step by Step. What is the significance of Step by Step, and how do you reconcile it with Louisiana Sky?
Oh, they're just totally different. I mean, I write songs about a variety of things. Step by Step, that's the title track of my first album that I recorded, almost, I guess, about 4 years ago with Gordy Quiz from Band of Heathens producing. And that was just a story of basically my marriage. I wrote it sort of, I had this idea that the chorus I had stuck in my head for a while, and then I just kept writing it. And it was basically how, a relationship, like a marriage or a long-term relationship, or a song, or anything, from building a family to building a home to writing a song, it's just in tiny increments that you just have to keep at. There's no magic wands, it's not like in the movies where you find true love and, you're happily ever after. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. It's not, nobody sits down usually and writes, a great song in just one sitting and it becomes a hit. And, it's more just this everyday work. I mean, I saw it really when I was a music student in college. I saw, people would come in and, they weren't very impressive, and then by the time they had been there 4 years and they'd been, playing and practicing and learning, they were putting on wonderful recitals. And I guess just anything takes a lot of work, and when I got married and when I had kids, I mean, my husband and I were just so clueless. We had no idea what we were doing, and that's really what the whole song is about. And I don't think, that album was kind of a collection of songs. Louisiana Sky was something that more just, hit me. And I think back then I wasn't really looking at writing songs about topics like that. It was more personal. So.
And in other subjects, you won the Kerrville New Folk Festival, and you also won in the Woody Guthrie Songwriting Contest. How was it there?
I did not win at Kerrville. I was one of the finalists.
Sorry, my mistake
that's
again.
Okay. I wish I had one, but I think only 6 people win. But it was just to be chosen as a finalist because they have, hundreds, like any given year, like 5, 6, 7, 800 people entering. And last year it was 32 finalists, and I was one of them. So that was a pretty amazing experience. You go there and you play on the stage where you see the people that have played there, and it's amazing. That was a great experience. That was last year. And then in 2018, the first thing I ever won was Woody Guthrie, the songwriting competition, and I had just entered it on the last possible day, and it was the first sort of social conscience song that I ever even attempted to write, and the song Dreamers, and I sent it off and sort of forgot about it. And when I came back from, that was 2018, I had gone out to Kerrville at the end of May just to, that was the first year, I think it was the first or second year I'd gone just to camp out and, people stay up really late at night and you meet great songwriters and play play in circles. But I came home and because I'd been out of cell phone range for a while, and I came home and checked my emails, and there was this email that said, "Hey, you've won the Woody Guthrie Songwriting Contest. Come out to Oklahoma and play a set on the Saturday night main stage." And so it was a great experience. But I think even more so, just Woody Guthrie. Growing up from the time I was a little kid, we all learned "This Land Is Your Land" in school, and I really was always really attracted to Woody Guthrie and his story, and listened to his music. And Pete Seeger was a folk singer who also did a lot of, he was friends with Woody Guthrie, did a lot of his stuff, and he had lived in the next town over from me in the Hudson Valley. So it was really meaningful to be chosen for that. And also it was a topic that the song Dreamers that was chosen for that was really kind of close to my heart. It was about the DACA young people, the Dreamers. And, we had in the high school that I've been working at, we had several kids in that program, and they were just really amazing and accomplished young people. So I felt good about being chosen for that. And it was a great experience being out there too. I heard, I don't think I heard Dreamers, but I've heard that about the significance, because there have been many who are dreamers, many children, many students who are dreamers, and most of them, it's not the fault that their parents came in, and there's many ways to come from one country to the United States. It is not their fault, and if they've done everything, studied and graduated and everything, they should deserve to remain. Yeah, well, and especially when, knowing some of these kids, some of them, the ones who are really, who are motivated enough to get into this program, they have so much to offer. These are kids, a lot of them who were really they weren't the kids who were getting in trouble. They were the kids who were working hard. They were applying to colleges. They were wanting to be part of the American dream, American society. And my grandmother came over kind of the same way. Came over as an orphan with her little sister on a ship. And it's funny because I ended up writing a song about that last year. I haven't recorded it yet, called Promised Land, but it's the same. It's you just have hopes and dreams, and when you come of age, and that's the irony, when you're a young person coming of age, and to suddenly find out, well, no, you can't do this. I had students who said to me, my parents never really talked about it much, but it was just, when I went to apply for college and scholarships, it was like, well, no, you can't, I had students who were legal students. They'd been born in this country, and they said, like in my family, my cousin, he's 2 times smarter than me, and he can't go to college because of this. So, it was. I think these are great kids that deserve a chance to really, but it's this very, when I was reading, I read a lot of articles to kind of flesh out that song, and a lot of these students really have like a foot in each world. Like they just feel so tenuous, like they're part of America, yet it can be snatched away at any minute and sent back to somewhere that they've never been in their entire lives, except when they were very young. So it's a very strange situation. Of course, now it's, even though that tenuousness is still there, now all the COVID-19 and everything has sort of been, taking the forefront of all that. So everything's kind of on hold, I think.
Yeah. So before leaving, I just wanted to say that your music is one of the greatest. It tells the truth. It's down to earth. I love it a lot. I hope one day that when all of this blows over, resolves itself, that you could one day come here to Florida for a concert, or I could go over to Texas with my wife to see you perform.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, both my sisters live in Florida on the West Coast, and I was out there last summer. I did a house concert just north of Tampa, in Clearwater, and that was a lot of fun. With a friend of mine, Josh Riley. He's a Texas songwriter who I met at the Dripping Springs Songwriter Festival. And but thank you. and it's hopefully live music will happen again in a few months. I'm supposed to be going to New York in June, New York and Massachusetts, but I think those dates will probably get canceled. And hopefully I'm also going to be up in the Northeast in September. Hopefully that won't get canceled, but we will see.
Yeah. Well, I do want to thank you for coming to the Americana Bistro Grill. We are a station which we have all forms of Americana music, including folk music. And for us, it's a pleasure and an honor. You're always welcome to come back when you have more songs that deal with the true America, the true reality of life. You're more than welcome to come here. And even I'll talk about the concerts in New England or Texas or even Florida.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Our program, the Americana Bistro Grill, was once associated with AMI Radio in Anna Maria Island. But we had to find better ground, so it's now with my program, the AG News Show.
Uh-huh.
We loved having you here, and we hope we have more singers, songwriters from the Americana music realm, not only you, but more from Texas and more from other parts of the United States and the world. Before leaving, I do want to issue a challenge to all of my public to please donate to the Health Alliance of Austin Musicians, ham.org.
Yeah, ham is awesome. Yeah.
There are many of the artists that I'm interviewing, they're going through a lot of rough time. And given the fact that the United States has a tenuous relationship with healthcare, in other words, I know I'm a doctor, but I work in the administrative realm. I was a doctor in the Dominican Republic, although I was born in Ohio and everything, but I work in the administrative realm, and I've seen that medicine here has been a little bit disorganized. And somehow...
It's very uneven. Yeah.
Somehow, the people who get caught in the crosshairs of this disorganization are those that need it most, especially now with this crisis of COVID-19. I want to challenge all of my public, go look at ham.org, or if you can't hear ham.org, please Google the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians. These are people that really need your help, and especially Austin musicians, they need the health care, they need the help so that they could be treated and not have to worry about high rising costs or anything.
Yeah, and ham does so much because it also helps provide mental health, which is super important. Especially in these times. I have so many friends who are touring musicians who really would be in a lot worse of a situation right now if they couldn't get health care, if they couldn't get access to mental health care, etc. through ham. It's a great organization. I've been supporting ham and also the Central Texas Food Bank, which supports people in need, and especially people who are maybe falling outside the cracks of being able to be involved in government programs. They haven't filed tax returns or they don't have documentation, so that's another great organization as well that's supplying food to a lot of people, musicians, non-musicians, everywhere in Texas. And there's just lines lined up now to get to these food banks all over the country.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that as well. I also want to challenge everybody to also to donate to the Central Texas Food Bank. Also, since our program is all national, but also around the world, I'm also challenging other people and everyone in my public, my viewers, to also donate to the Nebraska Farm Bureau. The Nebraska Farm Bureau is for the farmers so that they could have donations, the money to maintain their farms, so that they could produce all the vegetables, the fruits, and the food that we need that are placed in our table. We have to help ourselves as a country. We have to unite in these trying times. So,
that's a great point, yeah.
And I wanted to bring up the Nebraska Farm Bureau, the Central Texas Food Bank, and the Health Alliance for the Austin Musicians. If you know of any more, there's also one called the Rocky Mountain Music Fund, but I'm going to check on that later. But please, Google the Nebraska Farm Bureau Google the Central Texas Food Bank and the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians, and please, please donate. We have to help our fellow Americans, and we have to help those who have not enough that we do. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've been donating like part of any proceeds that I get from online shows to the Central Texas Food Bank, because I think it's that important. So
yeah, I've been donating to the Health Alliance of Austin Musicians in some of the musicians' names that I remember a long time ago. I've also donated to the Nebraska Farm Bureau as well. The Rocky Mountain Music Foundation, I don't remember the name right now, but I do know that I also donated to also help the Colorado artists that are also going through the same agony that Texas artists are going through.
Yeah, and it's all over the country. I mean, I have friends in New York City, musicians. It's just all over. Musicians cannot tour right now, and it's and those of us who are full-time musicians, it's particularly hard. I mean, I'm lucky I have a job that I'm working from home right now. My husband still has his work, but it's the concert that I'm doing. I don't know when you're going to air this show, but an online concert I'm doing on Wednesday, the 22nd. The other musician involved, the singer-songwriter Annette Wasilek, she's also a massage therapist, so she's lost all of her income because she can't play concerts. She can't do her regular job, and there's a lot of people who are who are in that position right now. So we all do what we can to help people out. It's kind of unprecedented.
Great. Before leaving, because I've extended it because I wanted to promote all of these charities before leaving. We're gonna be placing this show on the air as soon as possible. The earliest Tuesday, the latest Thursday, and it will be in my blog. It will be in my blog after I transfer everything to MP4s and then pass everything to YouTube and the whole bit. And we will send you a copy.
Great. So if you could also just mention, my website, ClaudiaGibson.com, and I have mostly my stuff on there.
Yeah, we're going to be mentioning your website and your YouTube.
Well, actually, a Facebook music page, the Claudia Gibson Music on Facebook has a lot on there too.
And we'll mention that. Too. The Facebook, the YouTube, and the website. Okay, awesome. I want to tell everybody, and I wish everybody the best. Peace in, peace out, and peace everywhere. And we're going to be leaving the set with Claudia Gibson giving us a tune from one of her CDs. You could choose anyone.
A song, did you say?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. I think I will. I'm going to do a song that we didn't mention at all. I'm going to get my headphones from ripping off my head. This song is off my first CD, and it's called Cleveland, Ohio, and it has nothing to do with Cleveland, Ohio. It's just where the song started out.
Don't worry, I was born close to Cleveland, Ohio. In spite of my Hispanic background, I was born in Akron, Ohio. My parents left Cuba, and before that, they left Spain.
You know what? Let me just take 2 seconds. My wire just got kicked out of my. Oops. Okay. That will give me a little better reception. There you go. Is that better?
Yeah, we're ready.
Cleveland, Ohio, 10 a.m. Thursday. Checked out are different. It's a feeling I know. How can I make it without you? How can I live this way?
Hello?
Really think I would doubt you? Did you really? Did you really leave me alone? Route 8 PA seems to stretch on for days. I count all small towns miles. Water gap into Jersey in the suburban haze. The blue sky, the sun, your sore eyes. Hoboken, New Jersey. It's 6 p.m. Thursday. Park the car by the ferry, and I'll board that boat. Halfway across the Hudson, pulled a box from my backpack. I shook out your ashes, watched you blow off and flow. How am I living without you? Why am I here in this world on my own? No choice but to go on without you. But how could you leave? How could you leave? How could you leave me alone?
Thank you, Claudia. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
I'll be saying goodbye in about 2 minutes. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and our listeners. Again, peace in, peace out, and peace everywhere. And go and buy,
Thanks so much.
go and buy the CDs of Claudia Gibson. And thanks.